sure.
So this is Nabil, voicing for Mary. So, since living in the UK, how do you feel towards the idealisms of the Italian party for the country?
I think in the last 20 years or so, there has been a fairly steady drift toward a lesser sense of society. In Italian politics, people who vote for specific parties tend to see voters with different political beliefs as enemies, rather than as people with different but legitimate ideas. This causes politics to be more fractious than it used to be.
Within answering the previous question, do you believe the British believe the British government handles the United Kingdom any better?
I reckon that there's better respect and understanding of the legitimacy of different positions in the UK. Among politicians, if not among voters, not perfect but better. The quality of politicians seems better too. I don't think that's got much to do with the government, rather with Parliament. Having said this, public opinion got very strongly polarised on Brexit. For example, the other side is the enemy. Along lines that correlate quite a bit with specific parties, Tories are more likely to be pro-Brexit.
Knowing this, do you believe most governments are governed by the right-winged party?
Okay, so regardless of the specific cases of British and Italian government, it's always two states after all. And also limiting the scope of my answer to Western countries, which I suppose I know a little better, I would say the governments in general seem to be rather conservative and automatically right-wing. I can't think of any that proposed any significantly, let alone radically, new way to structure society, especially in terms of wealth distribution. Even left-wing governments have ended up being very timid in the scope of any changes they have brought about. Just tweaks, really.
With Italy falling into crippling debts, do you believe it will make the same move as the United Kingdom voting to leave the European Union? It has already been declared 67% of Italians want to leave.
Unsure about crippling debts, Italy's position is worse than many other Western countries in terms of debt, but not radically different. Also, I must question the validity of the study putting the percentage of Italians wanting to leave the Union at 67%. Other studies have normally found much lower percentages. It is true that Italians have voted parties that are vocal about their dislike of the Union, but the biggest of these parties have already muffed its own tones. In the recent general election, but I reckon such parties have been voted mostly for reasons where the EU is only invoked indirectly, if at all, such as unemployment and benefits for the unemployed, immigration policies and safety.
Cool. So how do you feel towards the British and Italian idealisms within their parties?
We're talking about the Berlusconi's party.
Whatever party you want to talk about.
Yes. And yeah, they do represent a liberal sort of idealism. Basically what they're trying to do is just to privatize as much as possible all the security services.
Yeah.
Like social security services. So to basically foster their own interests, like as a rich middle class.
Yeah.
How do I feel about it? I don't know. I mean, it's just
Fair enough.
shocking.
In the previous question, do you believe any party is right or wrong in their thinking? Are they flawed in their thinking?
We see now, like the first party in Italy is now the Fast Start movement, and they are, I think they're pushing the right way. They don't portray themselves as a left or right, but they're just trying to take right decisions for Italy. Some are left decisions, some are right decisions, and they seems to be very popular, probably because they're bringing back politics to closer to people, to what's actually the reality of living, the struggle of living in one of the poorest countries of the European community.
From that, sometimes Five Star Movement is described as a right-wing party, even though there is other parties out there extremely more right-winged view than this particular party. Do you believe the term right-winged still exists?
Not really. They as they portray themselves. I also believe that politics is changing, and rather than having left and right wing parties, we now have parties who do take right decisions and parties who take wrong decisions. More than.
In comparison with this new party coming into power, how do you feel Italy stands within the European Union, and do you think there's a chance that Italy could leave the European Union?
Apparently, no. There's nothing in the program, in the electoral program, says anything about leaving the European community or a referendum about it either. There is a lot of discontent regarding the euro as a currency, but that's still not a program of the next 5 years legislation. So I will still feel very strongly that will be part of the European community in full for the future.
From saying this, do you believe Britain should have left the European Union, or do you think we've created more debt to our own society with living in this country, and how you feel towards this?
I believe that by living in the European community, the UK has put a lot of weight on the shoulders of younger generations. So no, they shouldn't have left. I think there are many issues within the European community that can only be solved by working inside the European community. It's leaving the European community for the British government. It's a bit like, I don't like the rules of the game, so I just stop playing. That's not winning at all.
Yeah. Okay. Like, in towards looking at British and Italian society, do you believe any country has particular values that are like more important in either country, or how you feel towards the politics of society?
So if each country has different values in their politics,
Yeah.
I mean, I see. Well, I think there are interesting similarities which are going on in different countries in general, which is, I think, far right parties are kind of developing more and more. So I can think of, well, Italy of course has maybe different problems, and therefore we have different kind of issues that
Yeah.
parties kind of use in a way to sort of talk to the masses. So, for example, I think certainly we have this kind of immigration issue, and which the Lega has in a way, used.
Yeah.
It's part of their campaign, I guess. And I guess you might have something similar right now going on with Brexit. Maybe not as bad. Well, not bad, but maybe it's a different issue in the sense that in the European Union we are kind of one of the main countries that welcome refugees. While for the UK maybe it's more a matter of welcoming people who maybe want to come here and work to find a better life, but maybe a bit less.
I get the impression with the UK, they're very much, as soon as people come into the country, as in refugees, let them stay for a couple of years and then try and move them on for like a better life, and if not, like they do try and get citizenship eventually, but I think sometimes the way they go about it is not the best. And do you feel in politics, this is a question I haven't asked, is do you feel, for instance with Brexit with us, the people who voted to leave, a majority seems to be people who are in their mid-40s or older, and then people who are younger don't want to leave Brexit because they have values that we value, such as to do with like art and education. Do you see that happening within Italy yourself, or is it completely different?
I think I'm not sure if we can summarize this as older people. I think it's got to do with their background and their upbringing and their education. I think that their view of the world is influenced by these things. But certainly older people might have a less flexible point of view. So there's a lot of ignorance, at least in Italy, in the areas where these right-wing parties can win a lot. Or if it's not ignorance, is just the belief that it's all the foreigners' fault, or just trying to find a reason to just say it's while actually the problem is I think just something else. It's not, you cannot just
specify it to one thing.
I mean, of course we do have problems in Italy with, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of refugees coming, and Italy has a lot of problems to deal with, and we have a lot of corruption on top of this, which makes things difficult. But so this makes people maybe want to convince themselves, that it's all the foreigners' fault, and if they vote that party, everything is going to be fine, while maybe we don't realize that that party is not necessarily going to sort out all the problems.
That's quite interesting, because currently you have a party running at the moment that's not quite a parliament party, but is more of a movement running
The
the
Five
Star Movement.
Yeah.
What do you think of them and what they're trying to achieve with their goals?
Well, I think it is a very interesting movement in the sense that it was born to fight corruption. So it was a movement created by citizens for just to fight for rights. Now, obviously, they have their own idealisms, which are, for example, to fight against the system. And in a way, I guess you could criticize it as populism. Can you say that? But considering Italy's history and corruption, I think it is an interesting movement. But I cannot, I'm not really sure how they will manage to actually implement what they say. So, and there might be some contradictions. For example, the fact that they might be pro getting out of the European Union, which I'm not sure would be the best for Italy. No. But I think it is an interesting movement in the sense that he wants to get rid of corruption.
That's a very good point. And it's quite interesting because the more movements like that happen in the UK, the more parties such as UKIP evolve and different versions of that. So it's quite interesting to see where we're falling into. And do you think out of that discussion, for instance, you have UKIP and we've discussed about like immigration and stuff. So like with us forming a lot of parties like that, you've backed up the point that use like a lot more accepting of refugees in the way our society's going. I do agree with that. Do you think there's any parties in Italy particularly like I just don't think would get a lot of support from their values?
I'm not sure I understand what you've asked.
Like, do you think there's a party values are too extreme?
If some party has too extreme values. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's really appalling that in Italy there is a law that forbids fascism, for example.
Yeah.
But there are parties which are clearly fascists, and they are actually, they keep doing that, and no one stops them. And this is Italy. This is the problem of our country. The fact that we have laws, but then they're not respected, and in politics everyone wants to do what they want. They just want to get the power to just do what they want.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that, a movement like the Five Star Movement is interesting in the sense that it is the only one which goes against this idea of protecting all, the power that politics has, but also the privilege.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, whenever they have to vote against reducing their salaries, both right and left do not want to do that.
Yeah.
But it's quite shocking, So, and so to answer to your question, I think not only parties like, for example, La Lega, which is obviously, how can I put this? Obviously wants to divide Italy and is against foreigners, but then the leader got his degree in, out of it, like in Romania, went to get his degree in Romania and got his driving license in Naples or something.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. I wouldn't take this as fact, but I've heard this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there are a lot of contradictions, and I think, but I think what is really shocking is that something like now
the dilemmas with them, what were you about to say?
Yeah, no, they are clearly advocating fascist values without even really hiding it. But and this is against one of the laws that we have in Italy, which was created right after the World War II. So they are able to exist and to get people to follow them, and they're not the only party like that. But, and so there is quite a lot of far right. But again, I think since the 80s there's been a movement of where the far right has expanded a lot, and kind of some values of the far right have been kind of in a way also accepted by other parties. And you can see a lot of people, politicians who go back and forth from left and right, or I don't know, left parties who kind of use traditionally right-wing values to get to power. So it's a world where this kind of division doesn't really exist as much as it used to, I guess. But yeah, so I think the fact that we have parties like Casa Pound is just, I'm not sure if it is only an Italian phenomenon, but I think the fact that it's against the law is quite shocking. But it's not surprising when you think that Berlusconi has been elected so many times. So.
But that was what I was reading the other day, was Berlusconi's just made a law that he can actually make laws in Parliament now, even considering he had at least a 5-year ban, something like that. It's quite interesting, like that you can just, this is a beard, I can now be back in politics.
Yeah, I think because I remember, for example, there was I remember a scandal in the UK. I think it was it Tony Blair? I remember he resigned or something because he was recorded after a show and he said something. I think to remember, I'm not sure if it was him, but I remember, that was an interesting episode because considering all the gaffe that Berlusconi did.
Yeah.
For example, you know, they in Italy it's like, I feel like it's a world apart where politicians are never ashamed of what they do and they're never going to
Yeah.
resign. They're always going to be there forever.
There was I don't know if you heard about, there was a thing to do with what was it, tax things where politicians were just claiming tax even though they had enough money to pay it. They're just like claiming tax, saying they lived in one house
Yes.
and they weren't, and so on. And
Yeah.
even people such as really big names got known for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it's quite interesting in the UK. I don't know if it's the same in Italy, where if a prime minister steps down, the next person in line steps up, but they're not. But we obviously didn't vote for that candidate.
Oh, I see.
So like, usually you'd be able to vote in vice candidate. For instance, this is a big debate with Theresa May. Is she wasn't voted in, and she's convinced because she won the Brexit vote that I'm suited for this position.
Yeah.
And lastly, that brings me to, do you think, as living in this country, we've made the right decision to leave Brexit?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think people are really regretting this already.
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, in terms of the economy and the problems it's going to cause, to actually have, you know, to trade with the rest of the EU, but on many levels, you know, from maybe education and funding to, many levels. But it's like the richness of the country to actually be open and to welcome people, and it's a beauty of multicultural societies. But
Considering this country especially is known so much for their tourism, it's really interesting to basically, is it going to get to the stage you have to apply for visas and so on. It's going to be quite interesting of how far it will go. Will it go to the extent of Australia, or will it go to the settle down and then the re-vote happens, if it does ever happen, and that it gets abolished? We'll wait and see.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could go in
But-
different directions.
Yeah, so quite interesting. I think a lot of it's to do with, I think if the UK stay in, I think a lot of it will be to do with how can the EU salvage all the countries and benefit all the countries, considering that is what it was designed for. I think that would be the best one. Like, if it's designed to help countries, for instance, France needs help, Italy needs help. I think it needs to not change the values exactly, but construct it a bit more.
That should be the.
I think that might be the way out. But thank you so much for doing this.
Oh no, it's my pleasure.